Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Dina Cooper is a parent coach of 12 years and a wife and a mum of 2 teens. She believes in the limitless potential of us all to heal and be the parent we want to be. She's especially passionate about children growing up with the mindset, courage and resilience to live their potential through helping parents develop their leadership skills. She is the author of Smart Parenting, How to Develop Your Child's Mindset, Courage and Resilience for the Future of Work, and the founder of the 8-module Parent as Leader method. Today we're chatting about this notion of childhood resilience, and I warmly welcome you to the show.
Thanks, Amber. So great to be here with you.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since day one of the Politics of Everything, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one solution to make the process quick and painless, the way it should be for those of us who just love great content and want to get our ideas out into the world. If you know me, I'm obsessed with quality in terms of my guests, my sound, and everything about my show has to be great the first time. I'm time poor. It's so easy to use Zencastr. I'm not tech savvy and you don't need to be either. There's nothing to download. Just click on the link and off we go. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-productions now in their toolkit, you don't have to leave your browser to get that episode done, and done fast. I have a special offer for you, and hopefully you can experience what I have with Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my VIP code, the Politics of Everything, all lowercase and one word, to get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. How good is that? I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. It's quite funny asking this question in the context of the topic today, but what did childhood Dina want to be when you were a lot younger, and did you kind of get there, or what was your early career story?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My dad was a business owner, and he would have regular meetings with his accountant, and I wanted to please him and feel connected to him. So that kind of planted the seed for me to become an accountant. And so that's what I did. I went for work experience with his accountant for 4 weeks when I was 15. And then I went on to do an accounting degree and became a chartered accountant.
Oh my goodness, that is not the answer I was actually expecting. So there you go. And so then from there, how did you end up sort of, I guess, in the short form version of end up where you are now in terms of the work you're doing?
Yeah, so as a chartered accountant, I went into retail fashion and retail banking, where I was leading a small team in Australia. And then I was working really long hours, sitting in an office with the strobe lights, the artificial lighting. And, it was one day I was sitting there in my office. Everyone else had gone home. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And I was thinking to myself, is this it? Is this my life? And at that point I was really recognized, or I didn't recognize at the time, but I was really burnt out. I was really depleted. And they were really good. The bank I was working for were really good. I knew I wanted to change careers. They hired a career coach for me who came in from external. And she said, we went through the whole program, and she said, "You're an amazing coach. Do you want to come and work with me?"
Oh my goodness. That's a sliding doors moment, isn't it? Like if you hadn't done that, you wouldn't have done where you were, well, and ended up really where you are now in some ways.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that. So thank you for sharing that. So this term resilience seems to be something that to me has been highlighted in the past few years, and something that we use in everyday conversations, particularly around our children, childhood, parenting skills, all those sorts of things. What's your view on why we sort of focus in, or sort of laser focus on this word resilience?
It's to be completely honest, as you say, the last few years it's become, a real buzzword. We talk about it a lot. But when I was growing up, there was, we didn't talk about resilience. It was more about an environment of knuckle down and get on with things. And there was no reflection for how we were doing those things, nor an acknowledgement of how resilient we were. We just got on with things. And today, what I talk about a lot is that I would describe that as physical resilience, being able to bounce back from something, but not necessarily mental and emotional resilience, which is really the basis of where we're seeing things going today. So, if I explain that term, would that be useful?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Just unpack that a little bit, just because I think it does get used, but just because you use it a lot doesn't mean we understand it. Does that make sense? It becomes almost a buzzword in some ways.
Exactly. And I'm all for breaking down buzzwords because it's not the way that I operate. I'd rather know the core practical things I need to do than just the generalization of a word. So let's say that a child falls over and they've grazed their knee and they start crying. The physical resilience would be their ability to get back up and continue playing. And then, their thinking around that is, I can bounce back. And then when we show compassion to them crying, we set up that emotional resilience, and they're now starting to think, okay, for me, it's okay for me to feel pain, or it's okay for me to feel hurt. And then when we hold them whilst they're processing, whilst they're still crying about their knee, they're thinking, I'm not alone in my pain. And so fast forward that combination of physical, mental, and emotional resilience to an adult going through a stage of depression, which hits us all at some point. Now that adult's thinking, I can bounce back from this. It's okay for me to feel depressed right now. I'm not alone in my pain. And, that really helps them to move forward. Hey.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. And I think that, most of us as parents, that's what we want to be able to put in place so that we feel like we're not just sort of, I guess, addressing the here and now, but I guess, if you like, future proofing, our kids' emotions and abilities to deal with life, because it's not always going to be easy or simple or go our way. Are there some fail proof ways that you think we can build resilience early in a child's life? Because my experience is my children are 11 and 15 now, and it wasn't really until they were a little bit, in sort of mid to late primary school that I started paying attention to this. I think when they're really young, you want to make everything better, the idea, and I'm certainly not a helicopter parent, if that's one of the terms which, people would relate to, but I'm also not really free range. I think, the way your peers and the other parents in your generation parent, you too tend to mimic that a lot when you're finding your feet as a parent. And sometimes it's like, yeah, let's let them never feel this kind of discomfort. So we just, pacify them with something, whether it be food or an activity or a toy. And sometimes as you keep going and doing that, you think, well, what messages am I really sending? But, do you have some ideas how we can kind of build this resilience in a age appropriate way, not to be withholding of anything that, a child needs, but certainly allowing them to understand this muscle of resilience?
Yeah, so you're right. Like, we do have that, we want to take away pain for our children. And, a lot of us through our own experiences have experienced, difficult situations, pain, and we learn and grow from them. And we really want to be able to embed that, ability to learn and grow in our kids, right? So there's this, one of the things that I am really an advocate of is when you're giving your child feedback, for example, whether it's positive or negative, that you separate it from their identity. So, for example, if you're saying that was a beautiful dance instead of you are a beautiful dancer, or that was a mean thing to say to your brother instead of you are so mean to your brother. And it sounds like a really small thing, but what it does is it allows the child to learn and grow from their experience rather than it being fixed to their identity that they're beautiful or that they're mean. Because when they, for example, with the beautiful one, if they fix their identity to beautiful and then one day they don't feel beautiful, now all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm stuck here, I'm in an identity crisis because aren't I meant to be beautiful? And then start all these different behaviors to try and fix that when there's nothing to be fixed. It's just the way that we've coded our identity with all these attachments to it.
Yeah, that's a really powerful way to describe it, I think, and maybe a different, lens to come to it from, rather than just thinking of it as something, I guess, that you just do when you really, really have to. Like, I think that about resilience. It's like a bit like being really fit to me. It's like you don't just suddenly run the marathon. There's little steps along the way, and there's ways in which, that becomes how you respond to
Mm.
something as well. And do you think there's any reasons why, because it is such a focus at the moment for many parents in building resilience, and even schools talk about it in their programs and in the newsletters that I get from my children's school, for example. Why do you think we haven't been so great at maybe doing it in the past, or in the recent times in some ways?
Yeah, look, we live in a comparison culture. Whether it's grades, whether it's what subjects we're doing, or what we've got this set path of what success looks like. We're born, we learn to walk, we learn the alphabet, we go to school, we go to college, uni, get a job, and we continue in that job, and then we get to a certain age, and then we go, what's our life all about, and we start to question our meaning, and we either at that point set off on this journey of self-discovery, or we settle for a life with little meaning for ourselves. And I know it's not that black and white, but we're really in that cookie cutter society, and
Mm.
we fail to recognize our individuality from a young age. And for me, that's one of the biggest things that I think that we could do better, is actually recognize our children's individualities much early on. But I don't think we can rely on the current education system to do that, because they're only really designed to recognize and grade, the standard subjects like English, math, science, all of those. But what if you're amazing
Yeah.
at psychology or entrepreneurship or a myriad of other skills that don't get measured in our current system? You could then end up with the message like I did, because, I also didn't have parents at home that had the skills to recognize my strengths. So, I got the message, I'm pretty mediocre because my grades are mediocre. And then in reality, I really excel at people and helping, people unlock their potential. So, yeah, we need to change that. We need to change our ability to recognize that individuality.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And I think, if we can think about it like that, we're probably going to, start from a pretty good place.
Mm.
Look, being a parent these days is sometimes referred to as a job. And I must admit, in the myriad of other things that lots of us are doing, it can feel like that way, as much as I love my children.
Mm.
Share how you developed this concept of parent as leader and then turned it into this methodology. It's something very tangible that you can then share with other people. What was that sort of trajectory like?
Mm, mm. It comes from this statement that we hear often: you should just know how to be a good parent. And, I really I don't know if we're allowed to swear on here, but I really call to that concept, because, how do we know if we haven't had a model of a parent that we want to be? You know, how do we know how to parent in that way, right? So when I was becoming a parent, with the way that I was reacting to certain things and using the phrases that I was with my children, I was realizing that I was repeating what my own parents were, the way my own parents would handle things. And we get conditioned really early on. And if we only ever operate from the way that we were conditioned, we'll never be the parent that we want to be, who we are. So when we see parenting as a leadership role, we see that we're juggling multiple hats. We're a co-parent, we're a driver, cook, admin, cheerleader, counselor, you name it. And whilst we're doing all of that, whilst we're trying to bring out the best in our child, and it's just like a leader in an organization. So I really wanted to normalize that. And I wanted parents to know that just like leaders in organizations that engage support to be the best that they can be, so can we as parents.
Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense, and obviously you've had success with actually implementing this as well. So, how do you discover, I guess, for yourselves as individual parents, how is going to be the most effective way for you to kind of approach this, discussion around parent as leader, or your approach
Mm.
in this modern era? Because we're all different, we're all wired differently, we're all motivated by different things, and of course, as different as every child is, every parent is too. So it's hard to sort of, I guess, sometimes systemize things, or do you have a different view?
Yeah, look, it's evolved, and there's three key things that I think we can really do that is within our control, because we don't know what's coming for our kids. We don't know what kind of jobs they're going to be in and all of that kind of stuff either, so we can't really prepare them for a world we don't know. But the three things we can do, I think the first thing is learning about ourselves and how we're motivated and the lens that we're bringing to our child's behavior. And then learning about your child and the way that they see things and noticing where the gap is. So I use a tool for that, which I call the parent as leader assessment. And to give you an example, for example, I am what I call externally referenced. This is one of the lenses or the motivations that we measure inside the assessment. And what that means is I hold authority outside of myself. So I like to pay attention to feedback, what's going on for other people. I take advice from other people, all of those things, and really care about what others are thinking and feeling. Whereas my son is very internal. And so when he was young, internal means he's very focused on his own ideas, on what's going on for him. And, he's
Isn't that all children?
really good at backing himself. Yeah, absolutely. Well, not necessarily, right? But I've got one of
Yeah.
each. And then so for example, when we invited like a family over to play, this is when he was really young, like, talking like 2 or 3.
So that toddler
Yeah,
age, which I think is like peak selfish, if you're, I think that's what I remember a child psychologist once saying that to me. Like the world does start to just revolve around them, really.
it does. But then they've got different nuances. And I think that's what we're looking for, is what those nuances are. Because one of my sons who was external, he would really want to go and play with the other kids. Whereas my youngest son, he did not want to go and play with them. Now, me being externally referenced used to worry about, what everybody else was thinking, what the family were thinking, why my kid wasn't playing with them in our house. And here he was just being himself, playing with his train set and, doing his own thing because he was really comfortable with that. So I think when we start to understand that our kids are showing us who they are in these little micro moments, not during the tantrums, there's obviously like those developmental things which you're referring to, which, yeah, absolutely. They go into their self-centered mode and they go into that's all part of their brain development, to have those emotional tantrums and all of that. But when we get curious as to why our child behaves in the unique ways that they do, we're then better equipped to nurture their authenticity. So that's the first thing. And then the second and third things are, second is, getting on the same page as your co-parent, if you have one, aligning on your values. And the third one is, I've just mentioned it there, which is understanding what's developmentally appropriate for your child. So you don't personalize like the toddler tantrums or teens pulling away. That really helps us to be better as parents.
I think that's great. I'm definitely going to implement that with my children. We're going to change tack a little bit. Some of the questions I do ask all my guests, of course, I will put them to you as well. What at the moment are you finding really handy in your business or your life, really? Like a bit of a tool. It can't be your smartphone because we all have those, but something that you're actively using that's kind of helping you either save time or money or sanity even.
Well, I think I'll go the sanity route. I meditate most days, and whilst it's not a physical tool, it's certainly a mental tool, and it reminds me that there's a space much bigger than we feel is available to us, and it just gives me a way to disconnect from the constant thoughts that go through my mind all day, and it allows me to just connect back to myself before I start giving to the world. So that's one of my hacks for business, for family, for life in general.
Oh, that's great. I think you're the second or third person that's mentioned that. So there must be something in that for most of us. Your biggest life lesson to date, and why was it really important to you? I guess what did you learn is what I'm really asking there.
I love this question. I'm not sure if I could pick one, but if I had to, I think it would be the understanding that our mind makes up stories about ourselves, our children and others and the world, and having this awareness and finding the story that's getting in the way or driving the way that we're thinking it liberates us to be and do anything, including be the parent we want to be. So, for example, for years I believed I was a bad person, that I hurt people, because this was a story I told myself based on some of the reactions my parents had to my behavior growing up. So, that kind of, it was an outdated story, but I was still running it in my mind, and it really stopped me from forming the relationships I wanted. It stopped me, with my kids, I was people pleasing them because I felt so bad. I was a bad person. So there's all these behaviors that occur from stories that we're telling ourselves. So being able to have processes and ways to be able to catch our stories, I think, is one of the biggest things I've learned in my life to date.
How do you define your version of success? And that could have shifted over time, or could have been something that you've always held on to.
It's definitely shifted. I was telling my husband the other day, on my 21st birthday, I had a cake with a Mercedes 500 SL convertible on it.
Did you?
And that was my definition of success way back when I was 21. And it could not be further from what I want today. It's for me today, success, it looks like me liking and loving myself for who I am, and making a contribution to the world in my own unique way. And if I look at that through the parenting lens, my success there is raising my children to like and love who they are. And, I'll do what I can as a parent to help them believe in themselves. That would be successful to me.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Just a final message for us all today as we wrap up our conversation on the politics of childhood resilience.
I would say slow down to speed up. Don't be afraid to allow your child exploration, creativity, play whilst they're younger, even with societal pressure to speed up on things and learn this quickly and learn that quickly. Because with your awareness and acceptance of them as their parents, they will learn about themselves, and they'll build those foundation blocks for them to face the world as themselves with an unshakable resilience, which they'll have for life.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dina. And if you do want to connect further with Dina and find out more about what she does, including her free quiz, which will be on our show notes, you can keep scrolling and you'll find it down there. Until next time, take care. Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.